Welcome to the Worcestershire Local Enterprise Partnership National Careers Week sessions. These are fantastic sessions that really delve into the work that the team do and we do here in Worcestershire as a partnership. It involves employers, learners, providers and young people that we have the conversations with about what they experience and what resources they are bringing to careers, and really shaping the future of not just young people, but also the advice really works for those people who are looking to retrain and are thinking about a different career. Some of the resources are really do kind of stimulate that kind of thought process, but also give you some great signposts into other things. We hear from the Careers and Enterprise Company, who are a national funder, but also how the National Careers website really engages here in Worcestershire. We work with every school and really we encourage employers to engage in this agenda. It's critical for our strategy as we go forwards to 2030 and 2040. We need to inspire our young people to give them and show them the great opportunities we've got here in Worcestershire. If you've got any further questions, don't hesitate to come back to the LEP team. Look on the resources that are signposted through the sessions, and I wish you a great National Careers Week. Right, as we move on to this next session, we're really looking at that sort of triangle where you've got employers, educators, and the enablers when it comes to careers. And it's really important that we understand, the challenges that the educators have, and in terms of delivering careers advice. So with me, I've got Luke, and Luke's going to introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Luke. I'm Luke Payton. I'm the head of school at St. Bede's Catholic Middle School in Redditch. We are the lead school for the National Middle School Careers Hub. So we do lots of things with our young people from a very early age, so from the age of 9, with regards to careers advice and guidance.
Well, because middle schools, they're not across the whole county, but also just describe that kind of system for those, particularly those employers who kind of go, oh, it's just so complicated. Tell me more.
So we're a special group of schools. There are over 100 across the country, and we're in a 3-tier system. And certain areas of Worcestershire have the 3-tier and the 2-tier system, which most people are used to, which is just the primary and secondary. But in the 3-tier system, we have first schools, middle schools, and high schools. So within Worcestershire, there's still variance between the 3-tier as well. So within Redditch and Bromsgrove, we are 4-year middle schools. So our pupils join us at the age of 9 and leave us at the age of 13 to go to a high school. But there are other areas of Worcestershire where they leave at the age of 12 or they start at the age of 10. So it does vary across the different districts.
No, that's really helpful, and also gets us into understanding from education why the careers activity is really important, but also for a middle school, when you're not necessarily sending them on into post 16, whether that's college, whether that's sixth form, and you're at that slightly earlier stage, but careers is still critical for you in the school.
Yeah, definitely. So with our younger pupils, we focus much more on those softer skills to prepare them for sort of the workplace. So we work on communication, teamwork, dealing with conflict, as opposed to going in talking to a 9-year-old sort of about what they want to be when they're older, because a lot of them don't know. I know that when I worked in secondary, 16-year-olds don't know what they want to do when they leave school. So we focus trying to give a real solid foundation on some of those softer skills-based elements that come within the careers programme. And as they go through their time with us and they come into Key Stage 3, so Year 7 and Year 8, we talk more broadly about job families. So talking about areas of work such as care or education or retail, and then sort of to develop their knowledge of those areas. Again, not just into a specific profession, but just into the broader areas really.
Yeah, and I suppose that really takes us into what are the challenges as a sort of any educational establishment. What are those sort of challenges that you have around careers kind of advice and guidance and the delivery of that in your school?
Well, I think the past 12 months have been particularly difficult because obviously we haven't had the opportunities that we might have had before, with visits to employers or getting key speakers coming into school to work with our young people. But also from a CPD level, we haven't had the opportunities for staff to go and visit different employers to gain, develop their knowledge of the wider workplace, etc. So yeah, that has been a challenge. And I think another challenge within schools in general is just the time. We have so much that we need to cram in within that timetable in the week in terms of the curriculum that, sometimes those other really important things such as careers might get put on the back burner at certain points. So it's really important to just constantly try and reevaluate what you're doing as a school and to freshen things up. That isn't to say that, the past 12 months have not brought lots of positives as well. So, we've been able to liaise and work with different employers virtually, which has been really, really good. And I know that a lot of employers have really benefited from that virtual, and they've been able to give much more time now when it's virtual as opposed to face-to-face. So, like the past 12 months have been difficult for everybody, but we always try and see the positives and see what we can make the best out of a challenging situation.
And some of that's really interesting, particularly around, that kind of virtual delivery into classes. And I suppose, going through and, we're likely to see schools opening when we do Careers Week. But as we look forward, can you see how perhaps as a school you can use some of that virtual delivery and kind of help some of those challenges?
Yeah, 100%. So as a school in the spring term, in the autumn term, sorry, we started to use our own networks as staff and as alumni to try and develop our own sort of network of employers. And we had over 100 different employers get into contact with us. So it was really through LinkedIn and social media, and gave us their details and said they're more than happy to do small Q&A sessions with groups of children, record videos for us, do virtual assemblies. And sort of we had so many more people now it's virtually feel that they can sort of help us and to do their part when it comes to the careers education. So that has been a blessing for us really, and it's something that has really helped us to develop our provision as we move forward.
And do you think that sort of virtual delivery going forward, you can see a sort of more mixed approach, can't you, coming out? But do you think that will still inspire the young people and get them to think about not necessarily what they're going to do next, you're right, but what are some of the things about the world of work that they need to kind of develop while they're in their school setting? Yeah,
I think with the young people, I think sometimes they get a bit fed up of seeing the same faces and listening to the same voices all the time. So, even though it's virtual and they haven't physically got somebody in the room, it's somebody new that they can engage with. And, using all the new technology, and us being really proficient now in sort of video conferencing, etc. It's the same as having somebody in the room. So I think it will still have that same impact. And it enables us to continue to develop that relationship. So, there might be other things that we can do virtually. I know that, some employers have offered for sort of they can do some more work and provide us with resources in particular areas of employment to support that need. So at our school we offer a virtual curriculum outside of sort of lockdown times where, because we have been restricted in extracurricular clubs and things like that pupils can do sort of learning outside the classroom, and that's been really beneficial and had a lot of support from employers, and then sort of fed in through that way. So I know that one of our contacts is somebody that's been working on the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, and so our pupils have been able to benefit from looking at construction with regards to the Commonwealth Games, and that's been really, really positive. So, I think all of those things feed into it, and I think the key thing with the careers education is seeing what you already do and seeing where you can sort of exploit the careers element of it, and that's what we've been doing as a school as well. Even just on a smaller level, in terms of the staff that we have in school, not all of them came straight to teaching. So I had a career before I was a teacher, so I've been able to share my experience of the area that I worked in, and that's been really sort of inspiring for some of the young people as well, to say that you haven't just got one career for the rest of your life, that you can change, and if things don't work out, there are other pathways available to you. So that's been really good as well.
Yeah, I certainly know I say I'm on my third or fourth career. and I kind of still don't quite know what I want to do. Well, I know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a racing driver. Whether that'll ever come about,
Exactly.
Who knows? But Lewis Hamilton, move aside. I'm sure that I'd love to have a go. But and I think an important message there for employers is kind of engaging with the schools. Because actually, you can help and guide them. It's to not just make it interesting and relevant for the pupils, which I'm sure all employers can do, but also making it kind of curriculum relevant as well really then helps. So give us a feel for how you can work with those employers.
Yeah, and I had some employers contact me before and say, "Oh, I don't think anybody will be interested in the job that the jobs that we provide." But there's jobs out there for everybody, and we're at St Bede's in particular, we're real big believers, and we want to raise aspiration and show to everybody that there's a job out there for everybody, and that every job is valid and worthwhile. So if you're an employer and you think, well, I doubt any kids will be interested in this line of work, I can guarantee that we will have some kids that would be interested in thinking about that for the future.
So it is really, have that conversation, reach out again. It can be done on a virtual platform or in person, hopefully, as we start to see COVID lifted. And then, that is then about inspiring our sort of future workforce, which is a real key plank of the work we do with the Careers and Enterprise company. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, just like I said, just make contact. Social media is brilliant. Sending a quick message on LinkedIn or Twitter to schools. Schools just dropping them an email and saying, I've got these things that we could offer. It might not be at that point in time the school's able to take that offer up, but you put it out there, and it might be that it comes on later on down the line where it's more appropriate. So, all schools are really willing to work with all areas of the community. So if you feel like you've got something to offer, definitely get in touch with the local school and just put your offer out there.
Yeah, because you said you were the careers lead for Worcestershire. Yeah. So how do you work with your other heads? I think that would probably be something of real interest to the audience.
Yeah. So within all the other schools, obviously we have our networks of different areas, and I'm working with the careers support from the local authority, from the Careers and Enterprise company. We regularly have meetings within districts and within phases where we share good practice. And we also talk about, I've had a really good offer from this employer. Is that something that you could be interested in? And it is about that networking. So there's lots and lots of opportunities to develop that wider network. And like I said, what might not work for one school at a point in time might work for another school. So we do share those opportunities and share those things that have come up to see, if somebody can use it and support each other really.
No, that's brilliant. And thank you for this. We all support our schools. Every school is part of our careers hub, and certainly we want to make them as welcome as we can. And we know that without the school, the pupil, the parent carers, the employers, we can't make this a success. So thank you for all the work you do.
No, thank you. Thanks for everybody for their support. Schools have been really grateful for the support we've received over the past 12 months. So thanks to everybody.
Welcome to this session that are part of the National Careers Week as part of the Worcestershire Local Enterprise review of what we do and everything careers during this week. We're obviously supporting the national programme, and when we look at who's key to careers, employers play a really key role in working with us and working with our programmes. I've got two employers with me today. Lindsay, do you want to introduce yourself and where you're from?
Yes, so hi, I'm Lindsay Faulkner. I work for Ice Blue Digital Marketing and Design. We're actually a tech company. We write our own software and offer software as a service. We're also a digital marketing company and events management company based in Kidderminster.
Brill. And Simon?
Hello, I'm Simon Hyde, the Chief Executive Officer of Foundzoller UK. We're part of a German industrial family based in Bremen. We're the UK subsidiary selling and servicing refuse collection vehicles and mechanical road sweepers for local authorities and the private sector, and we're based in Redditch.
Brilliant. So obviously you've been going through COVID and everything there. What do you think are sort of the current challenges, Lindsay? Probably the first question is to you in terms of the current challenges that employers are facing, and maybe even in companies in your sector?
So, well, COVID related, obviously there's the remote working element, which is we've all had to become very adaptive and flexible and creative in our ways, and ensure that communication is carried on. As far as employing recruiting goes, it has been a challenge, because obviously we can't get people in to interview them, so we've had to find ways around doing that. But we haven't struggled too much. I think, you know, being a tech company, it's slightly easier for us because we've got everything there ready to go. So but yeah, I mean, it has been a challenge, but the thing we struggle with most is recruiting locally. Really, the skills gaps that we have in the area are tricky. We're currently looking for an Azure administrator and a senior developer, and we're having to look to sort of Birmingham and beyond. And actually, remote working helps that a little bit, because you can search further out for people, but we don't really want to. We'd prefer to recruit locally. We'd like the skills to be in the area.
Well, in terms of COVID, I mean, we very rapidly took a positive view. We had no option, but within 24 hours, everyone was working from home with laptops and webcams and microphones, and so we reacted quite positively. And of course, it focused the management team on a different type of management. You know, my view was, let's not focus on where they are, let's focus on what their outputs are. And we made sure that we communicated. I mean, we set up regular team briefs. You know, I sent out emails once a week. It's just pure communication. We tried to encourage that communication, because the fizz and the buzz of the company wasn't there anymore. You know, we were a very gregarious bunch, and that natural spirit was in separate households, not in the office. So that was a difficulty, but we overcome. I mean, in terms of our performance, we've outperformed our targets and budgets, which is great, and it's made us think how we run the business in future. In terms of recruitment, I support Lindsay's comment. It's been tremendously difficult because, you know, we all know part of the recruitment process is looking into someone's eyes and feeling their body language and the presence, and you just don't get that over a camera. All you can do is do what you can do. I mean, we've been very lucky. We've taken on an apprentice during COVID, Sam. He's local. He's doing his apprenticeship in Hard at Worcestershire College. Very successful. We're delighted he's on board. But that's not to say that we're going to get another Sam, because it is very difficult to choose the right candidate over a lens.
Yeah, and what have you done about things like, say, work experience? Did you do that before COVID, and then how have you adapted?
We do work experience. I mean, Gary, you know my background. I'm really keen and eager that the links between schools, colleges, and businesses is really tightened up. And we do a lot of work with schools and colleges. I think not a real criticism to the schools and colleges, but I think they were restricted on what they could do. I mean, we run the mentor scheme, or I coordinate the mentor scheme, and that's been put on hold because of access. There's a safeguarding issue. So they've been restricted, and it's been frustrating for the mentors. But I think we've just got to ride the storm. And once, hopefully, the 8th of March is upon us and it can be released, I think we've just got to really accelerate and catch up the momentum of engaging with the schools. But undoubtedly, like Lindsay said, it has been tough and frustrating because it's something we like to do.
And Lindsay, what's your view on how have you worked with in these times through sort of work experience and those opportunities that you normally do?
Yeah, so we found exactly the same issues, really. Health and safety has come first. So we haven't been able to have students come in and have those really valuable opportunities to come and experience the workplace. I think moving forward, I think we see ourselves as working more remotely. So we're going to have to come up with more creative ways of engaging with students so that they can come and have those valuable times to experience what the world of work. It's thinking about how we do that. We've got to come up with something clever, really, because we can't lose that. It's really important for these people to have that time in the workplace to see what it's all about, so that they understand and we can understand them a bit better, I think.
Yeah, and certainly when I did this session with Luke around he was kind of the head teacher. He was talking about, actually being able to do this sort of blended learning and also blended careers. I think, is that some of that sort of innovation you're talking about, Lindsay?
Yes, certainly. So I do think that's really important. It's certainly a good idea. I think the one thing I would say it's a positive out of COVID, if you can find any positives out of COVID, is the remote learning that students have been doing. I think it's actually given them a new skill. They've had to manage their own time. They've had to motivate themselves. They've had to learn for themselves. And I think that's a really good skill to have as you go into the workplace. So if anything's come out of it, hopefully they'll be better prepared. Especially if they're going into a flexible working placement, they'll know how to do that. They'll know how to manage their own time and get on with it in that sense.
And Stuart Laverick, he the principal of Worcestershire College, his views at the October conference that we did really are as follows.
But with COVID, how have things been in terms of providing that kind of learning environment?
It is a challenge in terms of getting that workplace experience, because we've worked really well with Worcestershire employers who've given work placements. We've been out to visits, obviously with apprenticeships as well. That's been curtailed somewhat, but to be fair, we've done some really creative things digitally. As you might guess, Gary, connectivity is good. We did some great sessions where we've been creating projects with businesses and then been supporting it using digital connectivity, working on various different assignments. I saw a great one where my IT people had a hackathon, which worried me by its very name, but obviously working with key employers over at Malvern Science Park, we were able to do some really clever project work. And again, they were able to help design it, but also then support the students learning both synchronously and asynchronously during that process, and again, it's worked well. So again, that adaptability to use technology.
Simon, that sort of blended learning piece, do you see it in manufacturing where normally it's kind of quite hands-on? Can you do that? Does that work with your company?
I think we've got to learn to adopt and make sure it does happen. I think we've got no option. Like Lindsay said, it's made us all think what can we do and what must we do rather than what we can't do. And I agree with Lindsay about the self-discipline of the students. It drives it. And as I say, we're focusing on the outputs rather than, are we worried when they do it as long as they do it? Whereas, when you got people in the workforce here from 8 till 5, they were yours, if you like, but we weren't really focused on the output so much. So I think it's a case of having to adopt a business to make sure that blended learning does work. But in terms of what we've been trying to do at Fanzola is we've been doing some virtual videos just to explain to some of the students what our business is about. If they can't come and see it, then we've invested in a drone and all kinds of media equipment. And we're all learning media skills quite rapidly, but it allows us to demonstrate what skills are required, albeit through a screen. So that's one way, but I think the blended learning is something that it's here to stay, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of our employers. They work really hard and they're really behind this agenda. As you know, in Worcestershire, we work with every school at secondary level, our middle schools, our FE colleges, our special schools as well. And the engagement that comes back from our employers is fantastic. So it's great to hear from you two around how you're starting to think about adapting that engagement as we go forward, because we know things are not going to go back to how they were prior to COVID. So what would you encourage employers to do to take this work forward?
I think I just wanted to say that that the LEP's doing some really great stuff at the moment with the Creating Future Workforce campaign and the Enterprise Advisor campaign. And I think it's just really important that communication between the educators and the employers and the enablers continues, so that there is a real clear understanding of what is required in the future in the workplace. And that gets translated into the curriculums that is being taught, so that when these students come out of their learning, and that can be apprentices or just students in the colleges, or even people within the workforce that are upskilling, that those skills are relevant and they're work ready. So I think that's a really important part of it.
But I'd just like to add to that as well. I think the LEP are doing tremendous work on bridging the gap between local businesses and the educational fraternity. And I think now more than ever that needs to be intensified. And I really welcome the initiatives and the work that you're doing, Gary, and your team. And I think, a few businessmen that I'm engaged with, they say now more than ever we need to strengthen that link between schools and the education and business, because but whatever dimension externally, the Brexit factor, the COVID factor, we're going to need young local talent to help us get out of this in a positive outcome. And I think the work you're doing is vital. And I know one of your pledges is to keep the talent within the county, and I think that's fantastic. And I encourage a lot more employers to get involved with the programmes you're running.
So certainly if you're an employer, I'd encourage you to go have a look at the Skills for Worcestershire website. Equally, how can you get involved? Contact the Worcestershire LEP inquiries at wlep.co.uk. Hello, I'm Gary Woodman, and welcome to the session on enablers. You've heard from the film the great work the Careers Hub's doing in Worcestershire, and we're here to discuss sort of how that fits and sits in the kind of national perspective on careers and the work that we do. With me, I've got Judy Chadwick. Judy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's Judy Chadwick. I'm Director of Skills at Worcestershire Local Enterprise Partnership.
And from the Careers Enterprise Company, Richard, do you want to introduce yourself and your role?
Hello. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. My name's Richard Savage. I am an area manager within the Careers Enterprise Company, helping the LEPs provide the programmes that we offer.
Brilliant. And Richard, do you want to sort of outline a bit more about what the Careers Enterprise Company is and what it does?
Yeah, of course. So we are mostly government funded. From the Department for Education, we get some small inputs from corporate organisations that share our aspirations as well. Our purpose is to create a world-class careers education system for young people in England. So we do that in a couple of particular ways. We're a national organisation, and we work to produce products, initiatives, and research to better understand, deliver, and evaluate careers. And then locally, we work with the local enterprise partnerships to see those careers learning programmes implemented, with the aim being that they are implemented in every single state-funded school in the country.
Okay, good. So, and then sort of how does Worcestershire sort of sit in your kind of regional portfolio and probably nationally? What's your view of how our Careers Hub is doing?
You wouldn't have invited me on if I wasn't going to say positive things, obviously, but Worcestershire is one of our major partners around the country. It's one of our most successful partnerships. The team led by yourself and Judy, but also with Matt Tope as the hub lead, have been ranking amongst the highest of the LEP areas around the country. It was the first area in the country to have matched all of its schools to enterprise advisors. That's really important to us because one of our aims is to make sure that schools have a reference point from business and that they're grounding their programs in the reality of what employers are seeing. So an enterprise advisor is a volunteer from business working with a school. What we have also registered from Worcestershire is that you were one of the first to come on board as a careers hub and have been very successful in the metrics that we put up for a careers hub. What has happened in Worcestershire is that you've really grasped the challenge that a careers hub presents, which is around developing a community, getting schools and colleges to really work together, getting the employer view really put into that and mobilising the career, the employer inputs that can be given to career activities, and helping schools and colleges clarify exactly what's required for this world-class career system that we say that we aspire to, giving them the illustrations and the tracking to allow them to understand how they're progressing along that pathway, and providing a lot of collaboration opportunities and innovation for your local schools to learn about best practice from elsewhere. But increasingly, we've taken a fair amount of good practice from Worcestershire and passed that around the country. the other sort of achievement for the Worcestershire Hub has been around the way that you invest and that you use our investment. And that has been in local resources and activities that have been really effective. That's been built through the understanding that people like Matt have brought to the issue, and the kind of expertise that he has been able to draw in from your local schools and employers. And we think the best example of that has been through the COVID period, where the Careers Hub made a real response to the situation that schools and young people were facing, and has garnered great support and input from the local employers as well.
Great to hear that. And although you're right, we wouldn't have had you on if you weren't going to say something nice about us. I think we're always in that space of, how do we do this better? How do we make it work? I know certainly the personalities that somebody like Judy is, it won't necessarily focus on our successes. It will focus on how do we do this better. Judy, how do you think, how do you think we get the programme really working for Worcestershire, and how do you think we're performing nationally?
I think for me, Worcestershire, the reason that we're so invested in this is because we recognise that we have a need in our workforces to succession plan. We recognise that 1 in 3 people in our workforces is over 50. And we recognise in some of our industries like engineering, manufacturing and public sector, actually that's more like 1 in 2, sometimes even more than that. So there is a real need to open the eyes of our young people to our careers, and for our young people to understand the opportunity that there is here in Worcestershire. So for us, the Careers Hub kind of gave us a way into the schools to be able to have those conversations and to highlight those opportunities to our young people. So it's been a real win-win. We with our employers, a lot of our employers were reporting that they had skill shortages, that they were really struggling to recruit. We couldn't solve that problem from the situation, certainly pre-COVID, in terms of unemployed people in the market. We had to look into our young people, to look at the skills that we needed them to have moving forward, and to match the education that they were seeking with the careers that we have moving forward in the county. Our employers have really come on board with that. In Worcestershire, we had 83% last year of our young people have employer encounters. We can't do that without our employers being involved and being engaged.
Is that number with the COVID being the background, that 83%?
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. Okay, yeah.
Pre-COVID.
That's a really good number. From that side of things, what support do you think the employers need, Judy, if they're going to get involved?
We publish some best practice on how to make the most of the encounters. So whether that's about doing something as simple as supporting a young person to do a mock interview, whether that's going into school to do an assembly, offering virtual work experience, making that work the best, getting your message over about what your employment's all about and how that young person can engage with you. We do have materials that can support employers to kind of make the most of those opportunities.
And Richard, the Careers Enterprise Company gets some of the big sort of national corporates involved from an employer point of view. How does that work as well?
So it works in a wide range of ways. The first way is that they are a source of enterprise advisors for us, and they are then distributed around the country. So obviously, most of the national organisations will have roots in some part of the country, and they use those to provide enterprise advisors, those business experts working with the schools, not people who are expected to be educational experts. They can learn some of that, but also they can bring just the critical friend to the school to really comment from the outside looking in as to how something looks. The business skills that we ask them to bring would be about their planning skills, their strategic skills, etc. So there's that side of it. There is also a CPD side that we get a lot of input from the national corporates around the skill sets that they can offer to schools and to the teams that we have operating within the local enterprise partnerships. And then lastly, we get some funding from them as well, and some specific inputs. So Mulberry, Heathrow, JP Morgan are organisations that are contributing to the funding of the Careers and Enterprise Company, but others are contributing significantly through cornerstone roles. This is a particular lead role that we pass down to the local areas, so large beacon employers who wish to highlight their practice. And in Worcestershire, I think you have
12 cornerstone employers, and they do vary from sort of small organisations to some quite large organisations, and some of those are national entities as well. What we've been able to do for some of those national companies that are sort of represented on our local stage is actually make some of those connections through other careers hubs across the country and enable them to work more effectively with the schools in those areas as well. So it's kind of been a bit of a win-win for some of our larger businesses, and for some of our smaller businesses that are cornerstones, it's been about highlighting obviously them as an organisation, but B, actually the great work that they do and how much that they put into this agenda, and kind of, I suppose, celebrating that success.
Another of the reasons that we exist, if you like, was the idea that the careers environment can be massively fragmented. And there can be an awful lot of different activities happening and an awful lot of demands on employers and on schools. And part of the relationship with the national corporates is to try and draw those together. So where there are initiatives that, for example, Jacobs have done, the architectural company, around virtual work experience, that has been promoted through other employers to gather them on board and to provide all of the parts of the country access to what is obviously a very transferable resource in terms of virtual work experience.
Brill. And when I spoke to Luke, who's our middle school careers hub lead, he was very much saying that schools have also started to adapt the way that they deliver. Colleges, we heard from Stuart Laverick as well about the blended learning. Those resources, Judy, how do we put those together locally? And then perhaps, Richard, if you want to come in on how the Careers Enterprise Company help us do that.
So what we do for the schools is we look at the benchmarks and we look at what they need to achieve, and then we put supporting resources together. So we have a library of resources for our schools, educational establishments to access, and also some of our wider training providers as well, who are also subject to Gatsby as well. And those resources, what we tend to do is kind of find a subject and then localize that subject. So for instance, if we're talking about working in engineering and manufacturing, we might take some of our large employers like Worcester Bosch and kind of take that down to a local level and a role within that organization. Or we might even look at a specific company in its entirety, but actually explain that just because Worcester Bosch is an engineering manufacturing company doesn't mean that's all it does. It does have logistics, customer service, etc. And we'll either do that through the curriculum, so through lessons, or we will do that as a specific handout which has some activity within it. We might have videos or various other methods.
That's great.
That's what we find useful, is that we can fertilize some of those local activities and ideas by providing the framework. The Gatsby benchmarks are the basis of that framework. But what we also can provide is research input, both in terms of what works, but perhaps more importantly, excuse me, what has been proven not to work. And again, in terms of that defragmenting the whole system, that we want an employer's time, we want a school's time to be spent in the most efficient way possible. And therefore, if there are activities that are proven not to be particularly effective, we seek to cut them out of the programmes and to pass that learning on to others. And that's something that we really see reflected in the way that the careers hubs and the communities of practice around them work, in that they will be selective about what they're doing and they will do something for a reason, not for a random CSR or a sort of friendly anecdotal kind of involvement.
And so, the program's working really well for us, but always like these things, you can make improvements. Where do you think we can make some of those improvements? Perhaps starting with you, Richard, with not just so much employers, but also on the educator side.
So at the moment, we feel that the backing and the confidence of schools around this agenda is where both education and employers can play a key role. An enterprise advisor might be a way to provide that and to provide the leadership in a school, but giving the senior leadership within a school the confidence to acknowledge that young people have missed learning, but actually they have also lost some of the purpose for their learning, perhaps some of the aspiration and the inspiration that they may have had to where they'd like to head to in the future. I think from an employer's side, we see a real demand for the facts. What is actually the situation at the moment? What is happening in terms of employment? What do you expect to happen next? And also the opportunity for experience and for encounters. Even if you aren't a recruiter, then we all accept that aspiration doesn't grow in the dark. It needs the light of experiences of a workplace or an encounter with an employer who, let's face it, everyone likes to talk about their job to some extent. And where a young person can hear that and can hear that enthusiasm, that's where they will start to regain some of the confidence and the aspiration that we feel has been pushed back a little bit in the short term.
Brilliant. And Judy, from a local perspective, I know we're always looking at how we can improve and do things better, but what do you think about how we can improve either the employer's side or the educator's side?
I'm not sure it's necessarily about improving, but it's about continuing the momentum. So, I mentioned earlier about the 83% of young people that had employer encounters. We need that to continue that success year on year, because it is a different cohort of young people coming through. So we need employers to continue to engage in any way that they can with us to get that local messaging about what careers we need in our economy moving forward.
Brilliant. And certainly when reflecting back on Luke's session, he was saying that the schools, they communicate, they work together, they work in either clusters or grouping or age groups, and they're always kind of picking each other's brains for how to do it better. But for employers, this can be a bit of a minefield. And therefore, Judy, where would you advise a sort of local employer to go to get engaged with this work?
In terms of getting engaged, what I would ask an employer to do is to look at, first of all, what they existingly do. So one of the common challenges that we put to employers is, what schools do you currently work with? And then we ask them, where do you recruit your workforce from? So your entrants that come into your workforce, where did they go to school? And what you'll quite often find is there's a bit of a mismatch. So they'll be working with schools that actually potentially they will never recruit young people from. So we kind of will have that conversation. In terms of them moving that forward, the support, they can either come through to the LEP directly or go through to Skills for Worcestershire onto the website and kind of contact us through that, or ring directly through to our employer support growth hub, Business Central.
Brilliant. And if employers want to find out a bit more about the Careers and Enterprise Company, where should they go, Richard?
So if they Google Careers and Enterprise Company, or look on YouTube or follow Careers Ent on Twitter, all of those areas provide significant sort of information resources.
So certainly I'd encourage, if you're an employer who's thinking about how do I start to engage in this, it is a bit of, don't assume you're starting with a clean sheet of paper. There's loads of stuff out there. There's great examples. There's how to make some of your sessions really curriculum relevant that mean for schools, it makes it that win-win, which is where certainly the Careers and Enterprise Company and us in the sort of LEP team and our Careers Hub is really focused on making sure that every resource does that efficiency both sides. Thank you both. So as you know, Judy gave you where to go if you're an employer. If you're careers lead, then go to the Careers Hub, but also use those national resources. And we certainly thank the Careers and Enterprise Company for their support. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Judy. This has been a fantastic Careers Week in terms of the content, the employers, the sessions that we've gone through. Jude, what do you kind of conclude around the work that we've done this week?
I think my takeaway from this week, the real positives are, this is very much a partnership for Worcestershire. It's not just Worcestershire Local Enterprise Partnership pushing this agenda forward. It's our educational establishments, it's our employers, and also it's our young people who are actively participating in the agenda. So it's a real positive piece of work for Worcestershire, really helping to build towards our economic future. So for me, that would be the real takeaway. Everyone's in it, everyone's involved, and we're all making it happen together.
Yeah, and this is a real critical piece of work for the strategy in terms of where we see Worcestershire in 2030, 2040. And this careers piece is not just about young people and schools, although obviously that's where a lot of the focus is, but also older adults retraining, getting that advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about it a lot. We talk about the fact that we've got an ageing workforce, not just in Worcestershire, but, in the whole of the UK. And obviously our young people are a key way into that. And we need for them to understand things like the positive transitions that we discussed on Tuesday, but also our young people who've got special educational needs. We need for them to be able to explore their options, to have positive careers for the county. And I think, again, actually even older people can learn quite a lot from this week, because there's a lot of information out there about how people can make positive careers in the county.
And those options really are, kind of obvious statements, the world's your oyster, but lots of options, whether it's sixth form, whether it's college, whether it's retraining, there's lots of things out there. And I think what would you kind of say to a young person kind of at the start of this, starting to think about what they do next?
I mean, my advice is always the same: have a plan B. So whatever your plan A is, if your plan A is that you've thought this through and you think, you want to become a digital software engineer, great, fantastic. But what happens if that's not an option for you for various reasons? Like COVID, for instance, obviously has got in the way in terms of certain pathways. So what would be your plan B? And I think if you have a plan B, then it's so much more positive in terms of being able to move forward. I think what we've seen this week is the breadth of options across Worcestershire. Really positive for me is the introduction of the new technical levels into the further education colleges starting in September. That's really positive that we're now going to see young people coming out with really good work experience, but also really empowered, powerful digital qualifications. I think childcare is the other one, or education childcare is the other one in the county from September. But then also for me, the fact that apprenticeships is still a really viable pathway. Obviously during COVID, we've had some concerns over apprenticeships, but the amount of vacancies that we've got coming on board is showing that our employers really believe in them and that they're really viable ways into careers.
Yeah, and I think keeping that apprenticeship as the gold standard and really something that I think we should encourage as many young people to come into, but also employers to engage with. Also for me, one of the highlights was the Careers Hub. The fact we work with every school in the county really means that we have that total coverage and really work with every school. I don't know about you, but the SEND work really stood out this week. What's your view, Jude?
Yeah, I think a few years in, what we've now seen is the impact of that. And, a real highlight of the week for me was James. James, he kind of echoed how much more confident he feels as a young person with SEND, who can now kind of move forward in terms of in his choices around careers. And he talked about that really, really well. But also I think Bumble Whole Foods, they talked about as an employer how easy it was to make adaptations to have young people into their workforces who have special educational needs. And I think that's a real takeaway, because again, I think, and we've had sessions on this in the past where we know that employers just have this sort of block where they think it's really difficult to take young people into their workplaces for work experience or encounters because they've got special educational needs. And actually Natalie showed how a number of adaptations can be really positive.
Yeah, and that's where I think our employers, we need to give them full credit really. The employers session really came out with this is why I do it. These are the benefits, and I'd encourage any Worcestershire employers to get engaged. They can get engaged at whatever level they choose, really. To a whole menu of kind of engagement, but you can do as little, and obviously we always encourage as much as they can.
Yeah, I mean, we've got employers who literally will tip up and do a mock interview. And actually, some of the feedback, and I think Ice Blue talked about this, is that the virtual piece has been quite positive for them, because it saved the amount of time that they need to put into this agenda. So it's more always like just having a meeting from the office, really, being able to work in this way. And I think this will continue. We are looking at how we positively embed virtual encounters, whether they're in a work experience way, which is obviously something we've got to really think about how we make that work and embed that, or whether it's doing assemblies in this way or doing talks in this way. But I think there's a lot to be learned from the last year that we can embed positively moving forward. But I would encourage all employers, whether you want to do 1 hour a week, or whether you want 1 hour a week, 1 hour every year, or whether you want to be an enterprise advisor and give a day a month, I would encourage you to get in touch, have a conversation about what you think you can do, because it's really fulfilling. It's going to support you to highlight your industry and your company to local young people. And we would hope that will then help to decrease the challenges that you have in recruiting staff moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously we heard from the Careers and Enterprise Company just about, that kind of where we are nationally. Worcestershire's doing some great stuff. And we just need to keep on going. I think we're doing a great job. Very often we pat ourselves on the back, but sometimes reflecting on this week and just the amount of work and effort that people are putting in, whether they're from the schools, from employers, or from the team, I'm always really impressed. I don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really positive. It's a really positive piece of work. And as I said at the beginning, very much a partnership. And whenever anyone says to me, oh, it's going really well, Judy, well done, I will always say, well, it's not just my team, it's a partnership. We can't do it on our own. And I think the challenge is with this piece of work, which is different to other pieces of work, is every year it's a new cohort of young people. So just kind of dipping in and doing it for 1 year actually won't make that much difference. You've got to continue the momentum. So, if you want to make that positive change in terms of your business and, young people understanding you as an employer and looking at you as a viable option, it's got to be part of your long-term strategy. That is something you do year on year on year. The fact that we reached 83% of our young people having positive employer encounters in 2019-20 is really positive. However, we've got to keep up that momentum, because we've got 5,000 new young people coming on each year group every year.
Yeah, and certainly the way that we've adapted in terms of COVID's been fantastic. But taking some of those learnings, it's clear from the session with the educators, clear from the conversation throughout the week, really, that we've adapted really well. But what do you think some of the challenges are going forward?
I think one of the challenges is actually keeping up that momentum, because as people get back to business as usual, or the new normal, whatever we want to call it, I think that it is going to be challenging. Certainly over the next few months, education's going to be really challenging, because the government is talking about them paying catch up. So, actually, we already have had a number of conversations with schools talking about what they're able to do over the summer term. So there are going to be some short-term challenges, I think, in terms of this piece of work. But long-term, I think for me, it's just going to be about continuing to find a way to embed messaging to our young people about the opportunities in Worcestershire, because we don't have any issue with a young person going to study in Scotland and coming, but what we want is them to come back, and we want them to make the most of the great employment opportunities we have here in the county.
And I think that's a really important message. And I know we've signposted as we've gone through all these sessions, but where does a parent carer go? Where does a young person go? And where does an employer go to sort of find out more if this, hopefully these sessions stimulate them into finding out more?
So we've got a website called Skills for Worcestershire. So skills for the number 4.worcestershire.co.uk, and all the information is on there, whether you're a young person, a parent or carer, whether you're an educational establishment, or whether you're an employer. There's information on there about how you can get involved in the agenda. Otherwise, please just come through to the LEP and we will have a conversation and help you to move forward. We've got our Worcestershire Careers Helpline for young people. So, if young people want to have a further conversation about their next steps, all you've got to do is give us a call. And I'd really encourage our parents, particularly, to have a look at our Choices magazines. These are some really great resources that we've developed over the last year. And the idea is that they give you a lot to think about around sort of that next steps with your young person and how you can help them to discover what they like, what's good for them, and what might be their future career. So I'd really encourage everyone to have a look at those documents.
Great stuff. And thank you to you and the team.
Thank you.